Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. Welcome to our 164th installment in the Torah portion of the week. We are in Parshas Beshalach, otherwise known as Parshas Shira, right? Because that is the song that the Jews sang at the Sea of Reeds when the Egyptians get drowned. So it's the miracle of the Jews coming through, right? Coming through the water. God changes Pharaoh's heart. They run after them. And they get destroyed, right? They totally get destroyed, and there are a number of tests in the desert. Right? They're complaining there's no water, etc. And we talk about the manna, the food from heaven. And at the end of the parsha, it speaks about Amalek, right? It speaks about the war or the eternal struggle against Amalek. So at the end of the parsha, chapter 17, verse 14, God says, Hashem says to Moshe, write this as a remembrance in the book and recite it in the ears of Joshua. So I should surely erase the memory of Amalek from under the heavens. And Moshe built an altar, called its name, Hashem is my miracle, and he said, for the hand on the throne of God, Hashem maintains the war against Amalek for generation to generation. Right, so we have here the war against Amalek. Right, so the parsha tells us that Amalek goes after the weak. Right, he goes after the weak. He's a wuss. Right, doesn't fight straight on. He goes after the weak, the ones who can't defend themselves, so to speak, and they don't fear God. They don't fear God. Right, as Rashi over here explains. Now says Moiv Rebbe, Harav Agon or Moshe Shlita should be well. Brings down in Chochmah V'das. And he says, it's Pella. It's a wonder over here. Why are you telling me they don't fear God? Amalek hates the Jews and fight against them. And the Torah tells us their evilness and how bad they are. So if that's the case, why are you telling me they don't fear God? I mean, after the Jewish people are in the biggest role of their lives, and they still want to fight against them, right? It's pretty miraculous why they would want to do that. Be that as it may, they hate the Jewish people. They hate the Jewish people that fight against the Jewish people. Well, the Jewish people were chosen by God. So why does it say they don't fear God? Isn't that obvious? So you see, Rabbi here says, Amalek doesn't only fight against the Jewish people. Right, again, you have to understand, Jewish people in the biggest role of their lives. At the end of the day, what you have is Egypt is decimated. All the money's taken from Egypt. Everything. Right, animals destroyed. Vegetation destroyed. Whole economy destroyed. In fact, they want to fight against the Jewish people. Rabbi says it's not just against the Jewish people. It's a war against God. And what do they do? Or what is their goal? Their goal is to uproot from the world belief in God. What do they bring to the world? Doubt. They brought doubt to the world. There is a God, there isn't a God. I mean, really, they hold there isn't a God. There's nothing. No divine providence, don't pass go, don't collect 200, it's over. But they want to uproot any semblance of belief in God. So what does it mean? What does it mean they don't fear God? It means it's like they're taking their anger straight out against Him. Therefore, the Torah says you got to fight against Amalek for all generations. The Rabbi says, So we mentioned, what a wonder, for all the miracles that were done in Egypt after Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the sea. Right, what do? They heard also. They heard about the miracles. Amalek doesn't believe in miracles. Right, what are they going to say? Oh, they got lucky. Saturn was out of orbit. Right, the sea destroyed the Egyptians. It was high tide. They're bad luck. God forbid God did it. But they want to fight against God. And their hearts are hardened. They're cold. And their belief against God. And their fight against God. They fight against Jewish people. Really, the fight against God, right? That is the point here. Right? And they want to say that, how the Jewish people do all this. Wow, you maybe tell me Saturn's out of orbit, other things. Or it could be sorcery. Maybe it did through sorcery. All these things. Right? In other words, they are not going to give it a God stamp of approval here. They are going to fight against God at all times. Now it gets into a bigger issue. When you look at the world and you see, okay, there's chaos. There's a lot of chaos. But at the end, what do you see? There's order. There is tremendous amount of order. So how can you deny there's someone who put these things into order? So Rebbe brings down from the Mariel Diskin, Shua Leib Diskin, Zecher Tzadik Devrocha, great Rabbi Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, may his name be blessed. The Mariel Diskin said like this. He said, according to our own understanding, he says it's impossible to understand anyone who denies God. Anyone who denies there's a creator. Anyone who denies there's order. Why? Because if you look at the world, you look at nature, and you see how things work, how can you see that it's not wisdom? How do you see it's not organized? He said it's impossible to think that it came by itself. Right, like the idea by evolution, creepy crawly thing, caterpillar to a butterfly to this to that to get to a human. Never been proven. Last missing link, at least 20 years ago, maybe more, was a jawbone and a set of teeth. Not very, not a very good proof. But all of academia swears by it. Like, how can you not be a thinking person, and still believe in the Bible, in creationism? So it says, but if a person uses their mind, and you really think into it, how can you not see the order? He says it's clear God created the world. It's clear there's design. So how do you see it doesn't make sense for someone to see that clear as day? He says that is the sign that a person's from Amalek. Because what do they say? They say in any time, any place, whatever happens, there's got to be a reason. Scientific reason. Or sorcery or something. Because in every situation, they deny the supernatural. Right? They deny God. And we see in the last generation before the Messiah comes, as my Rebbe here concludes, this theory has a lot of power. Many, many people out there do not believe whatsoever God runs the world, that God's in charge. And that's why the Aramaic translation, right, Targum Yonasan ben Uziel explains, what is this war against Amalek generation? It's the war before the Messiah comes. That we're going to suffer from them tremendously. So what do we have over here? You have something doesn't make any logical sense. Right? The reason is, if you look into the world, right, as the Chovos Levavu says, you look into the world, you look into the human body, you look into other things that show clear there has to be a creator, that there has to be design. If you read what happens in Egypt and what happens afterwards, he says it's 100% impossible for a person to deny the miracles. Whether you want to argue the Torah is true, it's not true, doesn't matter. This is what the Torah says. So if the Torah tells me all these miracles, how in the world could you have a nation deny it? Everybody heard it. Everybody was trembling. Everybody's afraid of the Jewish people. They decimated the world power. Amalek comes along and says, no, sorcery. Saturn was out of orbit. It goes against their mindset. So there is no God. No miracle, no supernatural. No nothing. This is the power they put into the world. Right? This is what a lot of people believe. They tell me a lot of people are Bible thumpers and this and that. But most people are cynical. Right? You got a lot of people that are cynical. Right? So they don't believe in anything. Right? They don't believe in a superpower. They deny this. Anyone who denies this comes from Amalek. That's what they put into the world. But if you think about it, says the Mario Diskin, if we think logically, according to logic, it doesn't make sense. Right? A similar idea, the Talmud tells us, how can a person ever sin? We should have some people fear of God, but a person's only going to sin if nichnas bo ruach shtus. If enters a person a stupid spirit. Loose translation. What does that mean? What does that mean, a stupid spirit? It means, if I understand nature, if I understand the fact that I take an apple seed, and there's DNA in that apple seed, it goes in the ground, it gets watered, it gets taken care of, what happens to it? It grows into a tree. What does the tree give off? Apples. Why? Because that's the DNA of the seed. Right? Why is it on the tree only when the apple's ready to be eaten? It falls off the tree and gets loose only at that time? Luck. Nature. Right? That's nature. But if you think about it, and you realize the miracles of the human body as well, and you stop to think, if one thing goes wrong, right, all the cells in the brain, how small it is. They got millions in there. Right, what other electric things there in the brain? One of them goes a little bit haywire, person won't function. Why should that happen by one person, not by another, whatever? Nobody knows. But the intricacy of the human body and how it works, how can that be not divine? Because you think a person with a woman, she gets pregnant, right? She has a child. The body protects the child, right? Where the body is, sorry, where the child is, it gets totally protected, totally gets nourished. When it's born, can't do anything, right? Has to learn all these things. But one act, get all that DNA going on in there. It's not impressive. You can say, well, that's nature. Why? Why isn't that miracle? Right? What does the Mishnah Pirkei Avos tell us? Right? It says you have to know where you're going. Right? You're going to go in the ground, be eaten by worms. Where you came from. A putrid drop. That's how a person's created. Right? And the soul goes in the body. That's how a person's alive. How is that not miraculous? So, if you think about the human body, you think about nature, and who set up nature, and why it continues the way it does. Give a whole bunch of examples. Logically, nothing to do with oral law, right? That has nothing to do with Bible, per se. Pure logic. Look into the miracles of the human body. Look into the miracles of nature. And what goes on. How is there not design? Now you may ask, okay, there's a designer. Now what? Right, if there's a designer who says I have to serve him, or if I do have to serve him, I agree. There is a main designer. I have to serve him. What do? Right, so that's not the purpose of this discussion. But a person has to understand where it all comes from. When you understand where it all comes from, it's a whole different ballgame. That's why if a person thinks about it, says the Mario Diskin, how could you deny this? Right? All the more so you understand there's a creator and what he does for us. How could we ever sin? How could we ever think of sinning? So what's the answer to that? Because I got an evil inclination. Causes me to do things I don't necessarily want to do. But if you're really in tune, and really we should be shaking every second of every day, just to serve him properly, a person can never come to sin. Forget about how powerful the evil inclination is. Logic should overcome that. Right? We should be able to fight against it in many different ways, even if it's very powerful. What's the reality? The reality is it overcomes us. But it shouldn't, because I understand how it works. I understand the world. I understand what I'm supposed to be doing here. It's an awesome responsibility. But you're still going to serve to the best of your ability. Right? You still have to work hard, even though we fail. Even though we make mistakes. God doesn't want us to make mistakes. He wants us to do the right thing. Right? But in the end, we can be overcome. We can be overcome by emotion. Be overcome by our hearts. But according to pure logic, that's really the point. According to pure logic and understanding, there's no possible way a person can deny this and a person should ever sin. We say we don't live according to pure logic. True. Right? We're also very emotional. There are other factors going on. 100% true. Right? Amalek wants to mess all that up. Amalek wants you to believe in nothing. In the might of my hands. Not anything above me. No supernatural. no God. In a certain way, they'll say it's much easier to live that way. Why? Because everything depends on me. Or what may or may not happen to me. We have the choice. Do things, I don't do things. Right, but not because it's reward and punishment. It's all haphazard. Now, if you think about it, let's say you would believe that. If I would believe that, what's the logical conclusion? Why in the world would I want to live? How am I going to navigate the world and protect myself? You have no control. You may be overcome by things that are, nothing you can do about it. So it's a very difficult world to navigate. Because whatever decision I make, maybe the right decision, wrong decision, try and do our best. But in the end, there are things not in our control, right? There are a lot of things not in our control. A person can have the greatest mind and have difficulty making a living. A person can have half a brain, make a good living. Right? Seemingly there's no rhyme or reason. You'll say, no, I gotta put my best foot forward, gotta go to a good school, go to college, university, get a good job, and all that. But is there a guarantee for any of that? No. Could I do it without college? With half a brain? Yes. So how can people do that and then, people go through university and whatever, and they have difficulty, and they're much smarter, to be able to do better, and more opportunity? I would say yes. So why is it some of them struggle? Because they don't work hard enough, they're lazy, they're not a market. A million things. A million things why. Could be right. Maybe. But what does a believer believe? That no matter what you do, God can say no. And God can make you struggle. And God can make it difficult. But if you don't believe in that, then this world is a nasty place. And there's no rhyme or reason why things should happen or not. And if people die young, we don't have an explanation. People go nuts. If you're a believer, it's very hard not to say not. But if you don't believe, my bad luck. Can't believe this happened. Life is hard. Right, so how do you guard against that? You can't. Person may say, right, I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. Right, we don't believe that. But everything according to them is a mikra. My language, it means stuff happens. If stuff happens, how much am I in control? Not very much. A person on his way somewhere, boom, someone hits him out of nowhere. You're not in control of that. I mean, you could be, in theory. Someone was texting, not paying attention, bam, hit you through a red light. You didn't want that to happen. You didn't plan for that to happen. Okay? How much in control are we really? In control or not? So if you're Amalek, stuff happens. You're bad luck. But I would think it's a very hard way to live. Because then you see things you can't explain. So then someone will say, a person as a child is mentally challenged. Or a kid dies young. Say, what's the reason? If God is good. You believe in God if God is good. So the only way to explain it is to understand that person is obligated to serve God properly. You don't serve God properly, it's payback, right? It's reward and punishment. Part of that punishment could be your soul comes back to this world to fix up what it needs to fix up. Could come back in a messed up body. Could come back and then go through certain things and then, die young or whatever. But if you don't understand about reincarnation and the fact that the soul can come back, it's not a punishment for the person, for the child. Right? Remember, a child's born and they're born in a messed up body. It's not their fault. The soul's coming back in a messed up body to fix up what it needs to be fixed up. You go, is that punishment? For the soul it is. That's to come back in that body. But if you're going to look at it in this world, in terms of reward and punishment, we cannot say it's reward and punishment. The reason we can't say this is because once a person punished, not till after bar mitzvah. Right? Usually, by the age of 20. Person born in a messed up body, he's a child. It can't be. Because he's a child. He's not liable. He didn't do anything. There's got to be more going on. But if you don't believe in that, let's say, oh, come on, old wives' tale. You really believe in that? Come on, get real. Well, what alternatives do you have? Amalek. It's an alternative. I don't believe in anything. Stuff happens. Okay, it's your bad luck. You had a child. You had a messed up child. Wasn't what you planned for. You're not in control. If you do something stupid, right, transgress the 614th commandment, you bring it on yourself, it's one thing. But all things being equal, you didn't bring it on yourself. If you didn't bring it on yourself, why'd it happen? So again, if you're a believer, there's an answer. Might be a quarter compensation, consolation. But there's an answer. What do you say? If I'm Amalek, it's also an answer. It means wrong place, wrong time. You're bad luck. Because there is nothing else. But that means you're living in a world of chaos. That means you have no way to deal with anything. Now, you'll say you're also living in a world of chaos. You're right. There's chaos out there, but what I do matters. Mitzvahs can protect me. Averas can hurt me. Because of something bigger going on. Right? It's about what God wants for a person. And what you do and what the reaction is. Because if that's the case, then what I do matters. How I interact with others matter. What I do between me and God really matters. And it's going to manifest itself one way or another. And when it manifests itself, then we're going to see. Then we're really going to see. But if not, you have no way whatsoever to deal with it. Because how can you be comforted? You're like, it was a good time. But this is what happened. Wasn't my fault. But this is the hand we're dealt with. You have other things to deal with. I have this to deal with. Whatever. It's haphazard. It's a mikra ba'alma. Something, a chance happening. That's who Amalek is. That's what Amalek brought to the table. What they brought to the world. And there are people, plenty of people, who will live by this. Because when they look at the world as Hester Panim, Hester b'toch Hester Panim, total unclarity. You know that's a word. Right? It's totally clouded in this world, meaning we don't see God's presence. We don't fathom what's going on. But that doesn't mean I don't have to serve Him. That doesn't mean I don't have to pray. I don't have to do mitzvahs. There are going to be bumps along the way, 100%. But at the end, the question is how I deal with it. How I view it. Someone dies seemingly for no reason. It's a terrible thing. Because what are we going to say? We'll say it could have been prevented. You're right? Could have been prevented. It didn't have to happen. But in the bigger scheme of things, the way God metes out punishment and how the world runs, everything is measure for measure. But we don't see how that works. We're too much in this world. We're not spiritual enough to see. Only be able to understand it in the next world. I mean, we can guess, can hypothesize. No guarantee we're right. But if it's all about stuff happens, when you get a wake-up call, it's game over. Because you won't be able to deal with it. That's why most of the world's on Prozac. Life is hard. Things happen. How do I deal? How do I deal? It's a cruel world. It's tragic when something could have been prevented. So if you look at it that way, very problematic to live in such a world. If you understand there's order, there's design, there's measure for measure, makes it easier. Because you see nothing's haphazard. So this is the mantra. This is the mantra. Because otherwise, people just get numbed. They get numbed in life. And when stuff happens, they don't know how to deal. Listen, even in the ultra-Orthodox world, if you're not working on Jewish philosophy, if you're not working on this mantra, you also get killed. Say, I'm such a religious Jew, but once you get a trial, you're finished. So we got to work on that. We got plenty more to work on. But a person has to keep going over and over and over. In understanding there's design. There's measure for measure. There's more out there than we think. There's more to life. But what I do matters. What I do is significant. And it has an effect not only on me, on others in the spiritual world. And all that. Makes life a heck of a lot more meaning. Right? Gives us more meaning. Because if everything's haphazard, it does not matter what I do. And to live in such a world, can't even imagine. We ourselves don't understand what we see. Even though it's based on our own actions, most of it. We don't see how it works out. Sometimes we get a glimpse, God will throw us a bone. But in general, we have no clue. So, we have to take it all in, but we have to flex our emunah muscles. We have to flex in the sense that we know there's a higher purpose. We know doing mitzvahs helps us. We know doing transgressions, God forbid, can affect us in a negative way. In short, everything I do has repercussions, for good or for bad. Doesn't that give me more meaning? Doesn't that give me a reason to get out of bed? You tell me I get out of bed anyway. I gotta work, I gotta make money. I gotta provide for the family, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, okay. What are you living for? What do you do when you get stuck? When you hit a crossroads? Take Prozac. It's a good idea. How do you deal? I would hate to be told by someone, okay, this happened, you can deal with it. I don't care if it's hard. But then what are you going to say? Work so hard. Work so hard. I heard a story somebody told me a number of years ago. Worked very hard, put a lot of money away. And they put money in the IRA. And that IRA got messed up. Got taken, used, whatever. And all those years, imagine. All those years, overtime, extra, this, that. Putting away a good nest egg. For retirement, give to your kids, this, that. And then the IRA goes bust. Wasn't your fault. Someone took it, misused it, whatever. And now you're retirement age. You want to take the nest egg out. And then live however long, whatever the story is. You say, look at all the time I spent. Look at all the money I put away. Look at all the hard work, and I get a goose egg. So you say life isn't fair. Why'd that happen? I don't know. But obviously God wanted you to lose it. But when you look back on life, if you're not a believer and you don't think that God's helping or not helping or whatever, and running the world, your life has just been ruined. You wasted all those years working like a slave. But you were working like a slave because you knew what the end result was. The end result was, I got this nest egg. And I'm going to live good. The rest of my days. Be able to help people, this, that. Great! And that gets taken away. Then you look back and say, I could have spent more time with family. I could have done this. I could have done that. And instead I was working like a dog, slaving away so I could put this money away. And in the end, the money gets taken. Or misused, or whatever the case is. So those 30, 40 years I worked, what was the value? You say, you got to support your family, okay. But in the end, you're not left with anything. So why would God do that? Don't know. Probably payback for something. Whether you did it, your soul did it, previously, doesn't really matter. Bottom line is, that's exactly what God wanted you to do. Work like a dog, work like a slave, put all this money away, and get nothing. It's like what the Jewish people did in Egypt. Told them to build these buildings, whatever, on bad sand or whatever. And every time they built it, just fell. Like, what are we doing? Backbreaking work, and we're not building anything. It just comes crashing down. It's a total waste. Nobody wants to work for nothing. Right? Even if you're making money now, but you're not going to have anything left over, you tell someone, yeah, you can work like a dog, have all this money amassed, and not get any of it. You can say, what am I going to bother for? God makes a point. God makes a very strong point. And he says, I'm going to put you through the ringer, and I'm going to leave you with Zippo. Why does he do that? Okay, you'll find out later. But if it's all haphazard, if I was Amalek, I'd be pretty ticked off. How many you want to hear? Well, it's your bad luck. It's the way life is. You got to build yourself up. Now you got to work harder. Well, I can't. Much older. Things have changed. Got to suck it up. Use his life experience, go further. But if I be an Amaleki, you say, well, stuff happens. That's a hard pill to swallow. Oh, my bad luck. My bad. What I do to deserve it? Your whole life you worked for nothing. It's like building things in quicksand. Every time you do it, gonzo. I don't know how people, with that mindset, just give one example. Forget about sickness, other things. With that mindset, how do you deal with anything when it doesn't go right? Well, it shows you're not in control. Right? Something like this happens. Think we're in control, but we're not. Right? So in the end, that's what they believe. They believe stuff happens. They believe there is no God, and fighting against the Jewish people shows that they're fighting against God himself. That's why I have to remember every generation. Right? To fight for all generations till the Messiah comes. Or Rebbe points out, when before the Messiah comes, this mentality is going to be very, very strong. And that's what we see. Unbelievably strong. That's why we have to fight every day, learning Torah, learning Musar, ethics, working on ourselves to reach our potential and realize God is the one in charge. So I remind everyone, I have a class on duties of the heart every Tuesday night, 9 o'clock New York time. Speaking about fighting against evil inclination. I have 2 Q&As every week. Do that on Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock New York time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Also, I have class on the Book of Leviticus every Sunday, 9 in the morning New York time. And I do controversial issues on Tanakh Talk. That's every Monday, 1 o'clock Central Time. And do Pirkei Avos, Ethics of Our Fathers. That is going to be on Wednesday. That's 1 o'clock Eastern Time. So anyone has any questions, feel free. Find me on Facebook or at Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, or you can send me an email. RabbiChaimKoffman@gmail.com. RabbiChaimKoffman@gmail.com. Wish everyone a great Shabbos.